Hi there, this is Jenny Clark with Solvability. It's another session of Freedom Friday. We've got today Veronica Baginski from Nudge, who's going to talk to us about cyber and CMMC, but it's not really going to be the technical talk. It's really about the corporate culture of this. And this seemed like a good way to introduce possibly a series on CMMC and cybersecurity, because every single small business in federal contracting I'm talking to is concerned about what that's going to cost, how they're going to meet it, and who can help them. And we're all looking for ways that we could share information so we can make it more effective and be stronger in that area. So Veronica, what I'm going to do is just turn it over to you. And as I warned you, I'll be interrupting you from time to time to pop in questions. Russ is going to watch the chat. And we do end pretty close to 1:30. So I'll wrap it up and I'll give you a little warning. So Veronica, please take it away if you would.
So my name is Veronica Baginski. I work with Nudge, which is a program management tool for people to manage their cybersecurity. And what we're talking today is making sure that everyone is fully aware of what really is needed in cybersecurity in terms of who's involved with cyber compliance. It's very common that when I get a sales call, somebody says, yeah, I'm the IT guy, but I'm a bit concerned. I got a bunch of questions. And I say, that's great. I appreciate that you guys want to get on top of this, which is fantastic, but you need to make sure that everyone's involved. Every department's aware of what's going on. Are we good? We're good. Okay, sorry. Just making sure that everyone is aware of the NIST and CMMC policies. So that's your first step. Understanding, are you targeting NIST? You targeting CMMC? And we can go into detail about what the differences are later. But once you review those policies, get everyone involved in the team, particularly teams like HR, because they're the ones that are going to help write the policies for onboarding and making sure that people are following the rules to keep everything compliant. And this is about government IP. This is about protecting the government's information. But just as a general company, even if you're not getting involved with government contracting, making sure that everyone is on the same page in your own internal company IP.
That's a great point, Veronica, that a lot of times people think that it's an IT issue. And one of the biggest areas in cybersecurity is how do you make sure your employees understand the rules? And what I'm always fascinated by is when I'll read a story about, somebody in the accounting department emailed a spreadsheet to the insurance company. And it happens all the time. Could you talk a little bit more about how HR has to really beg for, can I be a part of this? Have you encountered that?
Yes, particularly with things like the acceptable usage policy. Every time you download an app, you get this huge list of information. You just say, I accept, because you just want your app. But when it comes to onboarding people, you do sit down as a new employee and read that information. Things like, when do you get a new key card when you hire somebody in? When do they get it? How many do they get? What's your documentations if somebody loses it? What access does that key card have to different parts of the building? If a person gets promoted, what additional accessibilities do they have? If there is any type of social media that's allowed on your company devices, and making sure that everyone is aware. And the most common thing I gets asked is, well, if I'm working from home, what does that mean? Well, your IT is going to get involved to make sure that you know what you need to do, but your HR team needs to know, okay, if you have people working from home, how do you verify that the tools that are in use are getting used, and what happens if that doesn't occur, right?
Well, Veronica, it's really funny that you would bring that up, because when all this happened, I moved from Tampa to Atlanta, stayed with my daughter and son-in-law and baby grandson for a while, and I just plugged everything in and said, it's fine. I'm not a government contractor, but I thought, oh my gosh, my clients are having the same kind of exposure. And the other thing is, I've seen a lot of things talking about, well, do I let my grandson use my phone, and does my phone have access to what? So talk some more about that, Veronica.
Yeah, when you have your company computer, there are certain firewalls and remote servers that you have to be in touch with. And if you have somebody who has access to that, that is a violation of the policies, even if it's somebody as cute as your grandkid. So you need to make sure that that is not something that anybody can have access to. If you get up and go to the bathroom, how quickly does your screen lock so nobody can see what you're looking at? If you have your email on your phone as well as your computer, well, it's great. Your computer is secure, but how secure is your phone? Again, HR needs to be aware of that, of, okay, do we need to start issuing company phones because the security measures behind that? You could have a separate computer that's set aside for any type of CUI data that is involved with NIST or CMMC, and that computer alone is the secure piece, and you can only send and receive information from that computer. So then your normal everyday computers or devices that you have don't necessarily need to be compliant. But again, having every team involved, everyone collaborating so they're all on the same page. One, to help contribute, because not everyone has the same vision of the day-to-day operations as another person. And two, to understand how important cybersecurity is. Sometimes it's just, well, I just need to be compliant because I need to bid on a contract. But that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of companies that get hacked and they lose, their clients' information. If you're a business that has 20 suppliers you work with, think about all the sensitive information you send back and forth on jobs or emails or contact information, and all that can get leaked out if somebody just doesn't pay attention.
Well, and what do you say to people like me that say, well, this is a big hassle, I wish there was another option? Because I'll give you a perfect example. I might share spreadsheets with my clients and I'll password protect it, but that's really not good enough. I know it's not. And then I see people that they'll send me a secure email, I have to log in and do all that. And it's so easy for me to say, how could I get around this? And it's almost like this whole surprise where everybody's working at home really meant that people weren't prepared to respond to it at all. What did the IT people say when they talk to you about it? What kind of pressure are they under, Veronica?
A lot. And to the people who say, I don't necessarily want to do it, it's a hassle. I mean, nobody likes to purchase insurance. It's very expensive. It comes out of your bank account and you just want to cry. But then when you get in an accident, you're extremely thankful that you had the correct insurance to cover your needs. Same with cybersecurity. Nobody thoroughly enjoys it. Nobody likes to talk about it, but it is it's a very upfront problem that people have to deal with in order to do work with the government. This isn't a yes, I buy into it, or no, I don't. If you want compliant, if you want work, you have to be compliant. And I'm sure Tim can speak more to this, but having the CMMC now, you have to get a certification. I mean, that's the government coming out and saying, okay, before with NIST, it was a self-certification. As long as everyone said they were doing what they're doing and you have policies you can prove, okay, that's great. Well, now with CMMC, in order to even start bidding on contracts, you have to get that certification. And that certification paperwork does not come easy. You're talking 6, 9, up to a year of just going through the processes and procedures, making sure every detail is counted for. And if you do it correctly the one time, cyber compliance through the life of your company is significantly easier. So that upfront time really does play a part in making sure your cyber compliance is good. If anybody's gone through an ISO audit, I'm sure they're aware of how insane that was. But again, if you want to be competitive in the market, ISO certification is not necessarily a standard, but it's a standard. Again, with CMMC, it's now a standard.
Well, so Veronica, you were talking about having to plan out, and I feel like there are a lot of people that really don't know where to start with a plan. There's been so much discussion about what level people have to be. And the other thing that I've been fascinated about is all of the large prime contractors and big government agencies say, oh, this won't cost very much. What are you seeing this cost? What are you seeing in time?
It honestly just depends on where the companies are at today. So your first step is to, one, get the people in the room who make the decisions and say, hey, if we want to do business, this is going to roll out in September. We need to start talking about it, because when September hits, and if you don't have the certification, guess what? You got to start then and there. So preemptively sitting down is the first step. 2, identify the policies that are listed in CMMC. Just get a general understanding of what's going on. Is this something my team can do, or do I need to get additional help? There's your second step. And then third step is identifying what's called the gap assessment, where I'm at today versus where I need to be. So if you're looking at NIST policies, and just as a short summation of it, you need a gap assessment, a POAM, or plan of action and milestones, and an SSP. A POAM is saying, hey, this is the policy, this is where I'm at today, I intend to get to here by this date. Well, with a CMMC, you get your gap assessment and you get your SSP, which is your system security plan. So there is no, oh, in 6 months, I'll get it taken care of. You need to have it done, ready, executed today.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up, because I've seen a lot of large prime contractors that the small businesses are their subcontractors, and they're asked to certify things. And there's always been a long list when you're getting ready to do a teaming agreement or a proposal, whatever it is, that will ask a small business to certify. And we see this paperwork, and they've got to be able to do it, or else you're just going to get kicked off the team. There's no question about that. And I feel like in some ways, this CMMC is a way to disqualify companies from doing business for the government. We're going to have a smaller defense industrial base, theoretically stronger, but the question is it going to keep people that have a lot of talent from being able to be part of the organization and part of the federal contracting market? I also thought what you said was very interesting about you need to get in the conference room. Who is going to be in that conference room from it? Just give me a list of all the organizations that you've seen and how involved they need to be, and who's in charge.
Well, the person who's in charge, I would definitely say, is your IT person, because you want them to know the technical portion of it. But getting, first of all the leadership involved. If there's a leader of a department, they need to be in that room. And every department's important. Finance, what kind of paperwork do you guys use? What programs and services do you use? I know this was a conversation at Metal Ops when we were going through it in January of 2017. Making sure that HR is involved. Again, when you onboard a person, when a person is, leaves the company, how quickly do you take away their information? How quickly do you reset their passwords? Do they have, when is their computers taking away? Do you completely, what do you do with the data that they accrued while in their email? And just making sure that every single department is involved so the details aren't missed. That's the key word with cybersecurity, the details. When you sit down and you go through that compliance audit, you're going to get some gaps. It's going to happen because, you're a human. But when you have that extra detail behind it, it really shows the level of intent in terms of cybersecurity and the level of attention you're paying to it. So having all of those people collaborating together with different points of view who are involved in different parts of the business really gives a full picture, and your gaps are going to be very much smaller than in another company. And I'm sorry, Jen, you asked another question and it totally skipped my mind.
Well, I don't even remember what it is, so it's perfectly fine. But you're right. There's got to be leadership from the top. And when I've read about the conflict inside organizations about it, it's like, the IT person says, I need this much money to do X. The finance people say, I don't want to spend that kind of money. Right. And then you say, well, who's responsible? Who is going to cause the organization to fail or be insecure because they didn't spend the right resources at the right time? And what I've heard is that it really has to start way up at the top of the organization, but that leader has to set the standard for it. What are you seeing happening there?
There is a lot of, it's the money. And when you look at your percent of business, can you afford to lose that percent of business for the cost of getting cyber compliant? And then after you get cyber compliant, you really do set yourself apart in the marketplace as, hey, I'm cyber compliant. Here's my information. You want to audit me? I'm ready. So the person who I guess would make the ultimate decision is whoever's in charge of your company, your CEO, your president, because they have the ultimate vision of the company, right? Getting a VP involved, making sure that they're on the same page. But when it comes to IT and finance, there's definitely butting heads that we see is, hey, I don't want to spend the money. It's just not on the books. We don't have it. Okay, well, what kind of cost-effective measures can we do so we are compliant? Like I talked earlier, can we have just one computer that's compliant? Or do we need all these different servers for everyone to be compliant? When you're handling CUI data, is it coming from one specific email, or does every email have to be compliant? Do I need double factor authentication on everyone's computer? Just looking at the little tiny details to make sure that If you want to be cost effective, well, then this is the platform you need to do it. And having IT, one, know the policies thoroughly and understanding where the government is coming from with those policies, you guys can get a really great collaboration together so everyone is happy.
Well, it does sound like the companies that are used to going after ISO and those different certifications really understand how broad this process is going to be. The other thing, Veronica, is it's not one and done either. What kind of maintenance program do you see, or how often do you see people needing to check or upgrade? Do they need to address it with every time they're going after a more complex proposal?
So in terms of the complex proposals, there are times where you could look at it. CMMC has 5 levels, 1 through 5, that increase in your cyber hygiene, as it's called. So if you are saying, okay, based on my capabilities, I think I'm a level 3, and they anticipate almost 90+% of businesses will be at a level 3. When you look at it and say, you know what, we really need to be at a level 4, then that's when you get to address your policies and procedures. There are certain things like updating your passwords every so many months. That's something that needs to be done. If you find that those things aren't those timetables aren't as secure as you would like to be based on the information you're dealing with, you have that autonomy to increase that level. If they're saying you need to do double factor authentication when you log into an email, is it on your phone? Is it on your computer? Is it on your tablet? So you can increase those things, but having those calendar reminders on there, one, helps you stay on top of things, because who wants to fall off the bandwagon after you go through all this work and all this energy to get to compliance? And then it just really takes a lot of the, not necessarily the thought process, but that constant maintaining daily every single time this policy needs to be taken care of. Just put it on the calendar and we'll be reminded, and then we can move into another policy and make sure that one is on pace. It's a lot of detail. It's a lot of follow-up. It's not a set it and forget it. I get that all the time. Well, I can just fill it out. I get my gap and I'm done. No, you're definitely not done. You haven't even begun to start. I'm sorry, but it's the truth, and I don't know what to tell you. When you go through some new change in your organization, you say, okay, this is the policies that we have for this current situation we're dealing with. Once you go through that change, if you realize those policies really weren't working for you, sit back at the table, talk to your team, understand where those issues were, change the policies, make sure everyone's aware of it. One of the things we get talked about is training. There has to be cyber awareness training involved in NIST and CMMC. And people go, well, I don't know what we have to get trained on. I don't know what we need to do. Well, how often do we need to get trained? How long do we need to get trained? Okay, well, if you can say that an hour once a month talking about these topics and this, that, and the other thing really gives us a full, well-rounded environment, that's great. But there are going to be times when you sit down and say, you know what, this training is just not enough. It's not the right topics. We need to talk about it again. And that's where you address the policies again.
Well, there's so many facets to this. The other thing that was popping into my head is when companies are thinking about what to bid in future, they might want to say, well, if the proposal comes out at CMMC 4 instead of 3, we're going to have to take that hurdle to be able to move up to it. So you're going to have to take that into account in all of their business processes and everything that they do.